Hello everybody and welcome to Senior Susie Stamps. Today I am starting my watercolor journey with some tube paints. I have some more tube paints that I found on Amazon in their used like new category. So I'm going to put these in my tray today, and I'm hoping to swatch them today. And then I have enough room in this bottom layer to put the set of 20 others that I have coming in. Now, these are professional grade Winsor Newton, and the other set that I have coming in is a Cotman grade Winsor Newton. The difference is this is a professional grade paint, and the Cotman is a student grade paint. So I'm going to reference a really good video that I found that it kind of explains the differences between the two paints for you all to do a little research if you're interested. But in the meantime, I'm just going to open these paints. I've never opened a tube of paint before, so I really didn't know what to expect, but I think it's going to be pretty straightforward. And then I'm going to load my palette. And then we'll do some swatching. So let's get started with that. And I've put these in kind of a color arrangement that goes with a color wheel. And this one happens to be ivory black. And I'm planning to keep those in my sealed container here. This one is Payne's Gray. I don't think I need a whole lot in my first little foray, but we'll see. This is Titanium White. I think probably one thing we do want to be aware of when we're doing this is to make sure we get the lids back on fairly tight. This is French Ultramarine. It seems like there's a little bit of substance in these. I don't know if you can see it or not, but down in the white, there's like a little, almost like it needed to be shaken up or something. So this is a French Ultramarine. I have a Winsor Violet. I'm anxious to do a little swatching on these colors for two reasons. One is to practice brush control, and then the other one is I just want to see the colors. Because, you know, looking at something like this is great, but when you can actually see the colors on a piece of watercolor paper. Oh, I forgot to tell you, this is alizarin crimson. I probably won't pronounce some of these right. You'll have to excuse me on that. This is a deep red, a Winsor Red Deep Rouge. Well, I guess it's just Winsor Red Deep. And this is Burnt Sienna. Great fall color. Now tell me if you know already. This is Yellow Ochre. If I should be wiping these tubes off, I'm going to wipe that one off because it seems to be, pushing a little bit out. Like maybe the tube has gotten squeezed up just a little bit. So now I've got some paint strode over there. This is Winsor Lemon. Winsor Lemon. And this is Permanent Sap Green. Okay. Now, I'll wipe my little tray off with this excess paint because I don't want to have to get all over everywhere. this little palette has a nice little separate piece that you can take out and clean when it gets too dirty for you, which is kind of nice. I found this palette on sale during Prime Days, and it has a little silicone seal here so that when you close it up, it stays wet. At least that's my understanding. So now, let me show you what I've got done so far. First of all, I used my little marker case for storing my little jars that I'm going to put water in. I have 2 of them. And a little microfiber cloth. And it just perfectly holds those 2 little jars. I'm going to put my little tubes of paint back away. And go get some water. So hang on a minute. I have some stamps that I got several years ago from WaffleFlower, and it's number 271212 for watercolors, and they're swatching stamps. Well, I guess you should put them on here. And so now I cut mine apart because I wanted to have them a little more useful to my application, but I have stamped some watercolor paper in a pigment ink, my Versafine. So these are ready to go, and my plan is to use these for swatching the colors. And then I also have some little singles, and I thought I would use them for swatching the color and then putting it on a little O-ring so that I can have it to just kind of flip through once in a while. But these will go in my notebook, and these are the quarter size. I think these are for baseball cards, if I'm not mistaken. I'll look those up and I'll put a link down below. This watercolor paper is cold press, so it does have a little bit of texture in it. Let me show you that paper again. And it's this Strathmore watercolor paper. It is 140 pound, 300 GSM. And I also have some little strips. I have some little strips left from where I cut my panels. And I thought these would make nice bookmarks eventually, or I can just use them for little scrap testing pieces before I do my swatching, just to see, since I'm not familiar at all with really watercolor and how much water you need. I thought we would start here and see how it goes. It may be a total disaster, but if it is, that's okay, because when you start something new, sometimes you end up with a total disaster, and it's part of the process. So I have my paint brushes here, and I'm going to choose just a couple of paint brushes that I'm kind of sort of familiar with, a number 4 round and a number 1 round. I think they'll do what I need to have done today. And in all of this moving craziness, I seem to have misplaced my watercolor book, but I know this is the first step that we need to do, so that's what we're going to do today. I don't have enough room here underneath the camera to be able to really let you see everything. Maybe I can widen it out. Hang on just a second. Better. I took it off wide angle view, and we'll see how that goes. So I'm going to take a little bit of my black ink and put it over on my palette here. till I get a little consistency that has a little something that I think I can kind of spread a little bit here. And so now today I want to practice a couple of things. One is being able to paint within the lines, because later on when I'm doing flowers and painting in stamps, then I want to be able to paint within the lines. So this exercise is great for brush control as well as just swatching your colors. Let's see, I got outside there a little bit on both of those, but that's all right. And so then I'm going to rinse my brush and pick up my Payne's Gray and move over a little bit. Payne's Gray is a really wonderful color, and it's really, to me, it's just not that all that gray. It has a lot of blue in it. It's a beautiful color. Let's see what it looks like. Isn't that pretty? And of course, watercolors dry a lot lighter than they go on. So it'll be interesting to see once these are dry how these actually look. So I'm trying to do a little scrub back and forth to fill in the block here. And I'm just going to let it go and move on to the next one. And it's white. And normally I think you probably wouldn't necessarily want to swatch white, but I think we'll swatch white just because we can. Because sometimes I think you need to have a swatch of everything you've got. And it does show up a little bit on this paper, because this paper has just a little bit of cream color in it. So we'll see how that does in the end. And this is the ultramarine blue. Oh, that's a pretty color. Vibrant, isn't it? It's a little hard to get all the way up in the corners with these, but if you hold your brush up a little straighter, that seems to be the key for making a thin line, and then you can kind of fill in around it. These brushes were my mother's, so it's kind of nice to hold them in my hand as she did. Although I don't know that she held many of this particular set of brushes. Most of them look like they're pretty much brand new. I think she bought them, just several years before she died, and she wasn't really able to do much during the last several years. This is the purple color, which of course I can't remember the name of. That's another thing I'll do after we finish, and that is to put the labels on for my swatch. I should have done that already, and that way you could tell what the colors were as I'm putting them down. But live and learn. We'll learn this together. So I hope if you're learning watercolor and kind of going along this journey with me, that you will be easy on yourself, because it's easy to kind of beat yourself up a little bit if you don't start out being perfect on something. And I think the thing about art is you don't have to be perfect, but you do have to get your brush wet, you know. So, all right, well, there's our first swatch page done, and we'll set it aside and let it dry. Let me get another one. So now we're going to move up into the reds. You know, red's one of my favorite colors, red and turquoise. One of the things that I found from that video the other day is the pigments in some of the professional grade paints, I think, are perhaps more saturated, or perhaps they're just a little bit more pure color. Was interested in that little video that I'm referencing down in the bottom, because she talked about the color numbers that go into the paints to make them up. So that was interesting to learn. And I thought I would make a note on my swatch page here, not only with the color name, but with the color number that is found in that paint as well. Now, I can't remember which one was the Alizarin Crimson, but I believe the one that I just put down was. And this is the Winsor Red, if I'm not mistaken. They're very close to my eye. But this one, the Winsor Red, seems to be a little more opaque. And all that means is you can't see through it. You know, with most watercolors, you see through them, and they have a different opacity, or the amount of opaqueness, depending upon the color and the paint that you're using. So, let's see. This one I think is burnt sienna. Don't quote me on that. I'll have it all lined out for us before we end up today, when we do our final review of them when they're dry. It'll take a few minutes for them to all dry. This is kind of a nice fall color. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on watercoloring, and one of the things that I learned is the bigger the brush, the more water, which is of course obvious, but you don't think about it so much. And now a lot of people, when they swatch, they'll start out with a more intense color over here, and then they just swatch out and add water and add water, and it's fine to do it that way, but I just wanted to have some intense color for all of these particular swatches. Let's see, I think this one's the burnt umber. It's kind of a squash color. I don't know why I think it's squash, but it reminds me of butternut squash. Oh, I have some really good recipes with butternut squash, and it's getting to be that time of year to start looking for them. Now, they'll be in the markets and have a good sweetness to them. But this just reminds me of the outside skin color. And then we have the Winsor Yellow. And it's when you start doing your watercolors, you'll kind of get a feel, I think, for the right amount of water mix in your paint. You can feel it on the palette. I've been kind of curious about that as I've been watching all these videos, and they say shiny and all that stuff. Well, to me, it's all shiny. That's just not very descriptive, but you'll feel it in your brush, the amount of water that you have in it. So there's the last one on that page. I'll set it aside. And then we have one more, and that's the green to swatch on this page here. And green is another one of my favorite colors. Well, I have so many, it's hard to say favorite, really. I think that's one of the most challenging things, is to limit limit yourself down to the use of some favorites. I don't see any point to doing that, do you? Now this has got a little too much water in my brush, I think, but we're going to run with it anyway. I'm going to tap off on my little towel here and pick a little bit of that water back up again so that I don't have such a big puddle going on there. Okay, so that is day one in my watercolor journey with you, and I'm going to take this little journey slow because, you know, we're moving and all that yada yada stuff, but also I want this to be a relaxing hobby for me. No pressure and no production stuff, and I want us to learn a little bit together. Now I don't see anything moving on that, so I think I got enough of the water out of it. One thing I do know about your paintbrushes, and that is you ought not to leave them sit in your water. Rinse them and then pull them out, because you don't want to get water standing down in here. It ruins the hairs on your paintbrushes. But I have one more thing to show you, and then I'll let these swatches dry and label them so that we can look at them together in just a minute. But I wanted to show you these little kitties because I think they're hysterical. These are some chopstick holders. So this is Snickers, and here's Cordelia. Oh, sorry, I just think that's hysterical. So I'll leave my little paintbrushes on there to dry on the two little cats. And I'll be back in just a minute. Well, it'll be a few minutes because it's got to dry and I got to label stuff. Hang on. Okay, I've labeled my swatches now. This is the Ivory Black, Payne's Gray, and you'll notice that Payne's Gray has 3 paint numbers, color numbers in it. The Ivory Black is a pure color number. Titanium White, and I think if you look closely you'll see that it's not truly a white. It has more of a gray cast, especially on this watercolor paper. There's the French Ultramarine, Winsor Violet, Alizarin Crimson, Winsor Deep Red, Burnt Sienna, the Yellow Ochre, and Winsor Lemon. And then the final one was Sap Green, and it's a combination paint also, PG36 and PY110. What that means is if you had these two paints in your stable of paints, you could mix Sap Green. Now, you can probably mix Sap Green and get close to it anyway with some basic paint colors, but I believe that's one of the reasons why these colors were recommended, is because we can do so much with just a basic set of colors. Now, with regard to my paint palette here, what I'm going to do is let this dry, because you can rehydrate your watercolor paints and use every bit of this. And so I thought I would just let them dry out in the natural air and then close it up, and I'll see you next week. Have a great week, you all, and thanks for coming on my journey with me. I really appreciate it, and I hope you're not going to be too bored with this and it's not going to be too slow for you, but I think if you're a beginning watercolorist, you may kind of enjoy going down the same road with me. So I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody.